Today, 70% of inner city youth in the 4th grade can't read at a basic level.
Congressman Boehner stated that 70% of disadvantaged youth can't read in the 4th grade. Alan Berger, professor of education at Miami University and a specialist in teaching of reading and literacy, teaches students who are studying to become teachers. He strongly disputes the idea that American schools are turning out young people who are functionally unable to read.
Yeah, I first heard that figure when I happened to be driving in my car somewhere and I had the radio on, and when he said that, and it was the time of the signing of the No Child Left Behind Act in nearby Hamilton, Ohio, which is 15 minutes away from where we're sitting, I was stunned. And so I happened to notice a day or two later in a newspaper, I think it was the Hamilton Journal newspaper, that he repeated that same figure. So I called up his office and I asked one of his aides, I said, where'd you get that figure, Martin? And he said he'll check it out. And then he called back and he said, we got it from the National Assessment of Educational Progress data. So I trotted over to King Library, the main library on campus, and I spent a chunk of time looking through a lot of documents. And they really made 3 mistakes. One is they used old data, but that wasn't such a bad mistake because the results were about the same. The categories are not accurate. Those 3 categories, basic, proficient, advanced, have been judged too hard by the General Accounting Office and other investigative agencies throughout the United States. Basic should be really one higher level up, and so on. And then in addition, a good chunk of what they did claim to find, or did find, was misinterpreted. So there was old research. The categories for the NAEP that were used were too high according to major investigative organizations throughout the United States. And then in addition, a lot of the findings were just misinterpreted. Then President Bush at that same meeting, see, I bought the tape. I was so astounded, by the way. I went down to Hamilton, I contacted the person, I bought the tape, the videotape for $40. I saw the whole thing from beginning to end, just to make sure that I actually heard those quotes accurately. And in it, among the quotes were perfectly accurate. And then in addition, President Bush, said teachers have been doing a lousy job. That's what he said, a lousy job, or with lousy results. And and I thought, man, that is truly improper. It's not accurate. And I just thought it was a reckless thing to say in front of lots of school children and a lot of school teachers at the signing of the document in Hamilton, Ohio.
If we've learned anything over the last generations, money alone doesn't make a good school. It certainly helps. But as John mentioned, we've spent billions of dollars with lousy results.
Why is it that negative criticism of public schools over the past few decades has reached such a boiling point? Why did Congress feel the need to step in and fix the system with an act called No Child Left Behind? It started in 1983 when the Reagan administration released a report called A Nation at Risk, warning that a mediocre American public education system was making our country vulnerable to competition from allegedly better educated foreign nations. The media led the way with sensationalistic reporting, charging that kids were graduating from public schools unprepared. A national inferiority complex about our educational unpreparedness for world dominance in technology rose to crisis proportions during the administrations of both President George H.W. Bush and his America 2000 agenda, and President Bill Clinton with his Goals 2000 legislation. Calls for 6-day school weeks, extending the hours in the school day, more homework, packing more into daily lessons that were heard throughout the 1990s paved the way for No Child Left Behind in 2002. In 2003, Ohio's own House Bill 3 increased the number of annual proficiency tests in order to conform with the No Child Left Behind. This put Ohio's public schools on notice that they would face being sanctioned in the event of failure to upgrade student test scores in 2 years' time. Failing schools would be required to give parents a list naming supposedly better schools to which parents would have the option of transferring their children at state expense, taking their per-student funding with them, and leaving their former school with even less funding to put toward educational improvement and a long-term possibility of being shut down entirely. The No Child Left Behind Act key provisions: annual testing of students in grades 3 through 8 in reading and math, schools to receive report cards based on students' test results, states to be graded on whether students taking required math and reading tests in 4th and 8th grades meet national standards. Schools must show adequate yearly progress towards 100% proficiency within 12 years. Schools failing to show 10% reduction in proficiency failing scores are subject to improvement, corrective action, or restructuring. School districts required to allot up to 20% of their funding for students in schools identified for improvement, corrective action, or restructuring are to attend other public or charter schools within the district. School districts with schools that fail state standards for 3 or 4 years must provide funds for low-income students to attend public or private learning centers. Schools that fail to achieve adequate yearly progress in 5 years are to be shut down or restructured. In 1992, parents were already flocking to education expositions such as All About Kids in Cincinnati at the Sabin Convention Center, going from visitors' booth to pick and choose from sales promotions for private schools, much like being at a car show and an electronics show. With the passage of No Child Left Behind on the national level and legislation in each state to conform to it, many who had made their names as crusaders for this educational clampdown are now significantly profiting from it. For example, educational secretaries William Bennett and Lamar Alexander have had profitable business relationships. In the case of Bennett's K-12 Incorporated, an actual chairmanship of educational corporations that are running networks of private choice schools and virtual schools on a for-profit basis. No Child Left Behind, regardless of its worthy goal of raising the standards of our educational system, has aroused suspicion that its true purpose is to downgrade public education and replace it altogether with schools run by business corporations such as these, by churches and religious organizations and other private groups. The movement to penalize underperforming public schools by giving children an expenses-paid ticket out of them to privately run schools had its start in my home state of Wisconsin, with a vouchers program in Milwaukee in 1989. Vouchers that would allow parents to give their children supposedly superior character education at private parochial schools were promoted as a cure-all for an unfixable public education system, and many who saw public schools as the source of rampant immorality in our nation flocked to the vouchers cause.